B team, we're back again. So we just had an interview with Devontae Cross. Amazing interview. Probably one of my favorites just because of his journey. That's gonna be on this week. However, we have my buddy from Westchester, a good old Mets fan like me, and another owner of a podcast. So it is Believe in Monsters podcast. It's a Chicago Bears podcast on BLEAV Network. My buddy Lukas Berry.
Yes, thank you guys for having me.
Did I say?
Yeah. Believe in Monsters on Believe Network. We named it way before we even joined the network, so it's just coincidence. But Believe is a fairly big podcast network, so we're stoked to be affiliated with them and working with them. But thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, bro. And I'm hoping us two could probably hop on your podcast soon. So tell me about your podcast a little bit. Like, when did it start and how did you guys start blowing up?
It actually started as we did fantasy football at first for like 3 years ago. We started as a fantasy football podcast, and someone asked us if we wanted to do it, so we just started doing it because I like all things football. Like, I'll talk football all day.
Yep.
So we started doing that. The place we were affiliated with had some issues, and one of my co-hosts, we were both Bears fans, so we're like, screw it, let's just do our own Bears podcast. So we just started doing it on our own, and then, I do a lot of my networking on Twitter. You can follow me at lberry_40. So I have a lot of cool connections on there, and eventually I stumbled on Believe Network, who I found out is like a really big podcast network. Like, a lot of their podcasts, they have former NFL players running their pods. So they were really welcoming to us, and we hopped on with them, and it's been awesome. So we just been talking Bears for about 2 years on there, Believe in Monsters. And yeah, I'm just a lifelong Bears fan. Like I said, I could talk football all day, but the Bears are my number one team, no matter what sport.
Dude, I'm going through some stuff now. You have one nice little pin tweet. Sorry, Muller.
Oh,
You got
go ahead.
last year, you got 350 likes on a tweet. 2018 Buffalo Bills. Sometimes we need a reason for optimism. Yo, facts. I feel you, Lucas.
Dude, Bears, I've come to realize that Bears Twitter is a cesspool of negativity. So I try and be a neutral but positive light on there, because
I like it.
I wouldn't say I'm a homer, but I like to at least look at things with a glass half full. I understand the Bears are bad. You guys understand it too. The Jets, it's like the same thing. It's like you endure losing season after losing season, but if people are just dumping on your team, especially your own fans, it's like, all right, you gotta draw the line somewhere. This is ridiculous.
I'm just happy I'm not affiliated in Mets Twitter. I can only imagine. Like, I follow some Mets accounts, probably like Anthony DeComo and like all those guys, but nothing where it's just like random Mets Twitter accounts and no shot. I already have enough with Frank the Tank, bro. I can only deal with him for so much.
Frank the Tank is actually bad for your team at this point. If he goes to a game, he's lost his last like 6 or 7 games he's gone to.
He is a mush.
The other day, he went to the Knicks, put a Knicks hat on everything, said that he was going to be a cheer for the Knicks.
Switch teams.
And they lost to the Heat with Jimmy Butler on a bum ankle. Game 1. I think he's at the Devils game tonight, cheering for the Devils. So, like, if you haven't put money on the Rangers yet, it's a lock.
Rangers is a lock. You heard it here first.
Game 7 lock. Who's the home team there?
The Devils are. The Rangers.
But a key point to all this is that this NHL playoffs so far this season, I think after last night, it is now 17-3 or something, 17-5, where the away team has won. So interesting little tidbit there going into tonight.
I'm sure it's going to be filled with Rangers fans.
That's how it always was. Yeah. Even games 1 and 2, dude. Like, once we were blowing them out, you could just hear the Rangers chants.
Yeah. The Devils have been not really relevant for a while. This is the first good team they've had in a while, right?
Yeah, they got a lot of young prospects. Jack Hughes has finally come up, and him and his brother. They're playing well. Their goalkeeper's okay, but they're just a young team that's just inexperienced, but they're fast and they have good depth players.
Yeah.
So they're going to be.
That's normally not a good recipe though for Game 7.
Huh?
No. That's normally not a good recipe for Game 7.
Well, that's what I thought too when we came back to the Garden up 2-0, and then they take 2 at home, and then they win 3 in a row against us. It's just the Rangers in the playoffs, dude. I'm telling you, guys like Panarin and Mika, and I love Mika, and I hope he stays a Ranger forever. but they just disappear, man. When the time comes where you got to show out, these guys just disappear. But I know hockey isn't the forte here, but we do have our third or fourth line. It's called the kid line. We got guys like Capo Caco, Alexis Lafreniere, Filipino. Like these guys are good, and they've actually been carrying us this whole series. So hopefully we get a win tonight. That's what I'm rooting for. But let's dive into football, because I know with your draft, by the way, Lucas was top 10 in the country for your mock.
Yeah. So I entered. I got invited to the Huddle Report. They do this mock draft thing every year where they grade people's mock drafts. And you can only get in if you're affiliated with a large network. So actually, I was competing against people on like ESPN, like people in this are like Albert Breer and like Peter Schrager and them types of dudes.
Wow.
I placed 10th this year out of 170, so pretty proud of that. I mean, I was texting Mike all last week, frantic about my mock draft, and he told me I was nuts. I mean, I was a little nuts.
I was hyped for you though.
I did get, the first. It's funny, a lot of these dudes got like the layups right, like in the top 10. And I ended up getting like all these one-off picks right at the end of the first round. Whatever, I'll take it. I got 25% correct, and I think 26 out of 32 or 31 placed in the first round correctly. So that put me in the top 10, and I was only a couple points off the lead. So if I would have gotten CJ Stroud or Will Anderson to the Texans, I probably would have won.
I told you it was smoke. It was all smoke.
Wait, so did you not have CJ Stroud on the Texans?
I had Tyree Wilson going there. I was Lance Zierlein convinced me. I mean, we basically had to submit this thing Wednesday night, and 3 weeks before the draft, Lance Zierlein was like, this has happened. Tyree Wilson is the dude. And he also correctly predicted last year that the Texans would take the Stingley over Sauce Gardner, and everyone said he was crazy, and that ended up happening. Yeah. And then he also he projected both their first round picks, so he's pretty plugged in with the Texans organization. So I kind of took him and ran with it. But my buddy who has connections with the Athletic actually texted me at like 11 p.m. that night, and he was like, Stroud is going too. And I was like, it's too late. My mock draft is in. But my buddy texted me that, and he was spot on. I mean, at that point, CJ Stroud was plus 550 to go second. He was like, I put all this money on it. Like, you should too. You should change your mock draft. And I was like, it's too, like, I just can't. It's already in. So.
Yeah. Well, oh my God, what was I going to say?
I don't
know. Top 10 finish, though. I'll take it.
Yeah, no, top 10. That just further proves, I mean, I've said it a few times on our show, ESPN are fraudulent.
A lot of them are. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there are so many people there that just don't know what they're talking about. Like Stephen A saying Kawhi should retire last week was peak Stephen A and ESPN.
Yeah, for sure.
Top 10 beating ESPN. That's what I love to hear.
We did have a nice little mock draft. We probably had the first 4 correct, and then after that, it just. But the thing is, and the Chiefs. But the thing is, though, with how we did our mock, we did it. So I know like Mel Kiper and McShay, they would go like every like 2 picks, like they would alternate. So what we did is I would have the first, Muller second, Gas third, and then so on and so forth. So we had the first 4 right, and it was looking really good. But now let me hear your thoughts about the actual draft. Like where do you see a lot? Like where are some good players that ended up in good spots? What teams did you like that drafted? What teams did you not like that drafted the way they went about it? What do you think?
Yeah, I could definitely give you that. Are both of you Jets fans, right? You're both Jets fans. Or are you an Eagles fan?
Cowboys fan.
Cowboys fan. All right.
Your guy's a Jets fan.
All right. So none of you are Eagles fans. A lot of Eagles fans get upset with me because I don't think their their draft was number 1. Personally, I had Nolan Smith ranked way lower than consensus throughout the whole draft process. But that being said, I think they killed it. My number 1 draft, I had Seattle at the top. I think they absolutely crushed it. Devon Witherspoon is a total Seahawk, Pete Carroll type of player. Like they stole him right out from under the Lions' nose, and no one had a mock there, obviously, because they do what everyone thinks they won't do. So I think that was a great pick. And then JSN going there was ridiculous. I didn't think he would fall that far. I was thinking maybe the Jets or the Packers for him, and they got both of them in the first round. And then round 2, they got one of my favorite players in Derek Hall, who I think is a stud pass rusher, has a lot of potential. So I absolutely love what Seattle did. I just think they crushed it. I think they put a really good team around Geno, and they did what they always do. They brought in a lot of really good players. Um, Pittsburgh was another draft I really liked. I mean,
I agree.
Broderick Jones with their first pick, he was one of my favorite kind of developmental tackles. Another guy I thought the Jets could take. Um,
We'll get into that, by the way.
yeah. Round two, they ended up with Joey Porter Jr.
Easy pick.
Pick 32. I'm very salty about that as a Bears fan, giving that up for Claypool.
Yeah.
And then they got Darnell Washington like 50 or 60 picks later than consensus boards had him. So I think they crushed it. And then I would put the Eagles up there as well. To be honest with you, I think the Bears did very well as well. I put them in kind of my top 10 drafts so far. We'll see how these guys develop, but I think they did really well addressing needs. The Jets, I'm back and forth on. I think they did a good job. Joe Tippmann was one of my favorite players in this entire draft, and it was actually a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had him over John Michael Schmitz as my top center. I think he's a beast. He's 6'5". I mean, he's a huge center, but the athleticism is absurd on tape. Will McDonald, though, I mean that is just a kind of. I had him going in the first round. I actually had him going to Philly, but
Yeah.
I told you I wasn't as high in Nolan Smith, but I probably would have taken Nolan Smith over Will McDonald if he went that route for undersized pass rusher.
Yeah, I think I think the way they went about that pick, it was definitely, I mean, I was watching it, Yas and I were watching it, and at 15, we saw JSN right there. I mean, everything just connected. Garrett Wilson connection, played with JSN.
Right.
At 15, like no receivers taken off the board. I thought that was a solidified pick. But the Will McDonald, like, was I mad about it at the start? I was like, oh my God, come on. But he's actually like, I knew he's fast. And the thing is, he has like an unorthodox body and his bend is wild. Was it maybe a little bit of a reach? Probably. But the way I think the Jets approached the draft was more so like I kind of agree with it, but then I don't. Like, I know a lot of Jets fans are just people in general, a little back and forth on the draft. I mean, listen, you can't hit them all. We had a good one last year, obviously, but I think Will McDonald is one of those where it's just a nice solid piece to have, like a rotational guy. Can just go in there if Carl Lawson possibly gets cut, like we were talking about before. So he's going right in. He'll fill in, and yeah. So it was definitely a head scratcher, but I think it's kind of like a wait and see. I mean, I don't think he's going to be starting right away, but we'll have to see. I mean, I think it was good for a future pick.
Yeah, I definitely like the developmental aspect of it. I guess my question is, would you rather have him or Nolan Smith? Because I think they're both very similar players, but I
Yeah,
think at least with Smith, you're getting a more. I think he's a little more developed than McDonald at this
for
point.
sure. Yeah, I
But they're
mean,
very similar. I mean, they both got insane bend. McDonald had he had a great Senior Bowl too. He actually gave my boy that the Bears drafted work. He gave Darnell Wright some struggles there at the Senior Bowl. I mean, his bend off the edge is outrageous. So yeah, we'll see. It's one of those picks you're like, you just got to wait it out and see.
yeah.
But I thought like maybe the Jets would, um, just go someone a little more established. But I think the Steelers moved up and stole their guy in Broderick Jones, moving up right in front of them at
Now,
14.
why did that happen, Lucas? I'm going to ask you that. You know why? Because the Patriots offered them a trade at a discount. They
Well,
offered a trade at a discount. I swear, they barely got anything in return.
yeah, and that's crazy too because I thought Christian Gonzalez was better than Devon Witherspoon, even though Witherspoon's tape is more exciting.
I think so.
But that was and so that was one of the picks I got right in my mock. I was like, there's no cornerbacks going to go between Witherspoon and Gonzalez here, and all these teams are going to take linemen and edge rushers. So this guy's literally going to fall to the pay. It's the most Patriots pick ever. It's like a cornerback in the first round. He's really good. He's ready to go. Like he's everything you like. And he, in my opinion, I think he was a top 3 player in the draft, and the Patriots absolutely stole him. They knew they were going to get him moving back, but yeah, Mike. I mean, you said it. You gotta do something to help Rodgers while he's there. I mean, I've had this conversation with you. I think the Packers kind of took you home on that deal there, and now you take a developmental edge. It's like, okay, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, if Gassy, chime in if you want, but that trade, I felt like there was some type of premium involved because we just had to get Rodgers. Now, I can go in the past trades and show you the trades that Douglas has made, and he's been a fleece machine with between his contracts, the trades, the pick compensation he's giving up and getting in return. Did we maybe give up a little bit too much? I can say, yeah, it really just, I think the only thing that really matters is that 65% of plays for snaps. It's going to turn into a first rounder unless he breaks his ankle or gets paralyzed. Who knows? God, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Which is bad news for you guys anyway.
Yeah. So now what you were saying to me is now they're trying to reconstruct his contract in some certain way. The deal is done, but now they're just trying to figure out all the
My big thing is just like I guess you're taking the developmental edges, kind of like you got to win now, like you got to win this year.
for sure.
Was that the best choice of that spot? I don't know. I mean,
I don't know either. Yeah,
he's
agreed.
putting a lot of faith in Sela, and like I said, I don't think Will McDonald's a bad player. No way. I just think he's going to need some work, and it's kind of interesting to just take that type of player there when you need some help.
I think that offensive tackle, offensive guard was. We even said this too. Like it was going to be a slim chance that they took an edge, but I knew for a fact we were sitting on Broderick Jones. Like we definitely had to get an offensive tackle because Mekhi Becton is where we might decline his 50 or accept it. We did draft Joe Tippmann. I thought was a home run right there. Like we needed a center, and that's a guy who's going to be there hopefully for a decade plus. I mean, we have McGovern, we signed him for a year, but to get a guy like that in the second round, like we needed someone like that. Like we need Nick Mangold, guy from Wisconsin, has been played for the Jets for years, barely got hurt. We need a guy like that. But yeah, definitely was it a head scratching draft? Maybe a little bit, but I think in the later rounds he kind of came up and solidified why Jets fans love Joe Douglas. I mean, that Izzy pick I think was a huge pick. And then you got Warren from Pitt as well, that tackle. So
all right, yeah. So that's a guy I actually did a lot of work on for the Bears. I was like, if the Bears don't take a tackle in the first round, who are some guys I like? Carter Warren is a guy I'm very intrigued by. I think he was one of the best pass protectors in college football before he got hurt at Pitt. I mean, he's a very solid, ready-made pass protector, which you don't see too much coming into the league. So that's an awesome pick. I mean, I like the Jets draft. I'm just a little bit taken back by that first pick, especially if they couldn't trade back or just take someone else. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I think they were definitely working on a trade back because we were watching, they were taking that pick down on the clock. There was probably like 2 minutes left, and I don't think there was any traction of a draft or a trade. So do I think it was like a panic pick? Not really. I think they really had their mind set on him if everyone was falling or if everyone was getting drafted, but we'll have to wait and see, man. So yeah. Okay. Muller, do you have anything? I don't want to be.
I was just gonna say I want to switch this over to Dallas. I mean, Dallas saved me, man. Mozzie Smith, I told my friend that gave me the Stroud news the day before. He gave me that, and I gave him this. I said, take this to the bank. Mozzie Smith is the first round pick, plus 100. You're gonna win some money. Put it in right now. And there he was to the Dallas Cowboys. That was like, I kind of expected them to either take a tight end or a D tackle, and I thought Mozzie Smith was a good fit there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the next day I took so much shit from Eagles fans, like, oh, you got that. And I'm like, looking at him, you know who your quarterback is, right? It's Jalen Hurts. We couldn't stop him on a 1 yard run the whole year. This guy could be the answer to that problem. And I mean, we've all seen the workout videos of him. He looks fantastic.
So, dude, he's a freak. He's a freak.
They literally had to go and call the company that makes the machine to figure out how to put more weight on it for him because he couldn't lift and it couldn't add any more weight. So I'm excited to see him play. I think he's going to be a big piece on our defense. I mean, we got the guy from Texas. What's his name? I want to say it was in the third round. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But I'm excited to see him play too. I watched a little bit of his highlight tape from last season. But
trying to find where your draft was here on Brugler's list. So Dane Brugler is one of my favorite. I know we talked about like some of the ESPN guys are kind of garbage. Dane Brugler, who writes for The Athletic, is the absolute man when it comes to prospects. I mean, do you guys read his Beast at all?
I haven't.
The Beast. So he basically writes this thing for The Athletic every year. He comes out with this thing called The Beast. It's literally a write-up of every draft eligible prospect. So like over 300 prospects are in there. He'll give you the biography of what they did in high school to what they did in college, to all their injuries, to all their like statistics. And he is way ahead of the curve on a lot of these guys that come to consensus come draft time. So like Luke Van Ness, for example, is a guy who's kind of a late riser where people like, oh, this guy could go in the top 10. Brugler's been on him since like the middle of last winter, like one of his top prospects. Brugler is the absolute man when it comes to draft prospects, and someone I really look up to in this. But he had Dallas's draft ranked 24th actually, but Mozzie Smith was one of his favorite picks. I mean, absolute freak of nature. And then you guys also drafted DeMarvin Overshown. He's a little bit undersized from Texas, but he flies.
Yeah, that's the one thing we needed last year, speed. We couldn't catch guys when they would bounce out wide. We had no one that could get there besides Micah. So I think he'll actually help us a little bit. I think everyone that we took this year will take pressure off Micah. He had to play way too much through injury last year for my liking.
Yeah, and that I really like that tight end you took, Luke Schoonmaker. He was a guy he was projected later in drafts, but this draft was kind of ridiculous at tight end. I mean, it was so deep, but there was a huge run on that second round, and he's another guy's an athletic freak. A lot of upside there.
Yeah, what were your thoughts on Deuce, our running back that we just picked up?
Oh, Deuce Vaughn.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you see a lot of the dude that played you see a lot of Sproles in him. Yeah. I mean, he's undersized, but he plays with a lot of heart, a lot of speed. He does everything you want him to do. He's just 5'5".
Yeah. Watching his tape, the way he kind of waits and figures out where he's going to go reminded me of the way Zeke used to do it in his first couple of years in Dallas. Just waited out, and then boom, hit that gap. And he only needed a little gap to find those yards.
Yeah, he's definitely a Sproles-esque pick. Honestly, I thought, well, it's funny. I'll bring this up. I honestly thought Jahmyr Gibbs could be kind of a sleeper pick there, and Detroit picked him at 12. But the news came out today that the Jets were eyeing him up right in front of where the Lions took him. So I thought that was fascinating. I mean,
very fast.
That would have been like a crazy pick, honestly. Like Breece Hall is a beast, man. Like some of these teams do crazy things. Like and for the life of me, I can't get over how badly the Lions treated DeAndre Swift. I mean, hometown kid. I played against him in high school. Absolute monster at Georgia. They just didn't use him. Like for whatever reason, he was in Dan Campbell's doghouse, and of course, he gets traded to the Eagles, which is like, come on.
Yeah. You know what though? Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk about it because I know that you said you're not really a fan of the Lions draft, correct?
I just think they added good football players, but they didn't draft premium positions. And I think they were in a position to absolutely take over the North. But if you're going running back, linebacker, safety, like they just picked and backup quarterback with your first 4 picks, it just makes me like, what are you doing?
Yeah, go ahead, Molly. What you got?
Yeah, I was going to say, bouncing off that. So where's your confidence for the Bears now after seeing their draft? Are the Bears now a little higher in the pecking order?
I honestly have thought the NFC North is wide open this year. I mean, I don't think the Packers with Jordan Love are scaring anyone. I don't think the Vikings with Kirk. I think last year is a little bit of a fluky year for the Vikings. I think they're very good, but I mean, what did they win last year? Like 12 games or something like that. They won something ridiculous. And
they were like first in the.
Yeah, but all their games came down to like the last minute in the fourth quarter, and a lot of that stuff kind of shifts the other way. You see some regression from year to year with that kind of stuff, with 1-score games. And I really thought this was the Lions division to win. I mean, the Bears have a lot of holes too. I can't lie to you, but I feel a lot better about them kind of competing this year than I did before the draft. I think I've talked to Mike about this kind of endlessly. I mean, he said Skoronski was the guy for the Bears, and I told him they're not going to take another guard. And Darnell Wright was someone I had mocked to the Bears forever. They seem to love the guy. So and I think it speaks volumes that they traded out of Jalen Carter for him. I mean, I don't totally agree with that, but I also can't argue with them protecting Justin Fields, who's their biggest asset. So
yeah, you know what though, like when I look at the Bears, like I think the Bears low-key are like a perfect mix of young guys and then like experienced veterans. Like you have DJ Moore on the outside now. You got Tremaine Edmonds in the middle. You signed another linebacker. I think it's from
TJ Edwards from Philly.
Edwards. Like I think it's a good starting point though. I mean, I feel like a lot of the fans now are kind of looking at the Bears as like a rebuild or kind of like a start, like, okay, we're rebuilding, but we're making our way to protecting Justin Fields and making this team good. I think that the Bears, they have weapons, man. I mean,
Yeah, their receiving core looks a lot better now with DJ Moore as the one. I mean, they had Mooney and Claypool kind of acting as the number one receiver before, and they weren't just made for that. So DJ Moore takes all that pressure off them. They have Mooney, Claypool, and Tyler Scott is one of my favorite players in this entire draft. It was a guy I've been talking about on our podcast for freaking months, and I was like, this guy he's Darnell Mooney, but he's better. I think he'll be better than Darnell Mooney. And like I said, Brugler had him as his wide receiver 7. The Bears got him in the 4th round, so he had a 2nd round grade for me. I mean, that dude is, I think he'll turn some heads, and their run game is going to be it's going to be outstanding again, honestly, with Fields. So yeah, I think they'll probably win 8 or 9 games this year, but it's really going to depend on Detroit. I don't know if the guys Detroit added will add that many wins to their calendar.
like, listen, the Lions defense is going to be suspect until we see them actually be good. Like, their defense is atrocious. Like, their defense is atrocious.
Dude, I don't trust Jared Goff. I know he had a good year last year, but I don't trust him to kind of carry a team, especially if some guys get hurt. And there's already some issues there with Jameson Williams and a lot of their staff getting caught for gambling. And I don't know.
Idiotic, in my opinion. Like, not the part, but like what the Lions do to dude. There was like 3 Lions players that were caught gambling. If you gamble in the facility, you're suspended.
Yeah.
But Mike, to your point, like Jahmyr Gibbs on the Lions or Jahmyr Gibbs on the Jets or the Cowboys or a team that's already like has a pretty good roster makes a lot of sense. I thought Detroit could have, like, Christian Gonzalez after trading Jeff Okudah would have made a lot of sense there. That's a premium position to me.
I don't know why a cornerback wasn't like a position like before even the mocks like were even.
Well, dude, they wanted Witherspoon, man, and that was they just kind of didn't get him and flamed out a little bit. Like,
yeah, you know what though? It's interesting because that GM, I feel like I watched their press conference and he said the game he was watching him at Georgia Tech and like fell in love. He was like, I want this guy on my team. Like, he was all about Gibbs. You saw him in the
like I said, I get it, but it's like their offseason kind of stumbles on top of each other because it's like you sign Montgomery, you let Williams go, you trade Swift. I mean, I think maybe I'm higher on Swift than most, but I think Swift is fantastic, and I just don't think they gave him a real shot there. So
he was never.
And then like the linebacker, for example, like they signed Anzalone too this offseason. So it's like you're kind of just doubling down on everything you signed this offseason. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Although I will say I think Gibbs is fantastic. He reminds me of Jamal Charles. I think he's a freaking beast, but I just don't think you win running the football like that. But like on the Jets, where like you could use him to spell Hall and kind of use him in the slot, like he's going to contribute right away. So that kind of it adds an explosive element to your offense where it's like, all right, come and stop us. But I don't know. I don't love it for the Lions.
Another weird part of all the Lions draft day stuff was while everyone and their mother was shaking their head trying to figure out what the Lions were doing with their picks, the Lions were celebrating like they just got they were celebrating like they got Bryce Young with the number 1. Yeah. And everyone's like, that was the dumbest pick ever. You got Dan Campbell over here tackling people in the war room.
Yeah.
It was such a weird situation.
It's funny because their draft, the way it went, like, did they maybe go about the draft like schematically? I don't think so. But with the players they got, I felt like they, in the Lions' mind, thought it was a huge position of need. Like, Jack Campbell's not a bad player, but after 18, that might be a reach, but he's going to be their linebacker now. Yeah. Hendon Hooker, I mean, we can shit on that pick too, but that just goes to show, man, let him sit behind Goff. That could be another future quarterback to play for the Lions, because I know, Gas, you were really high on him too. I think he's a solid player. What do you got to say about that?
This is a big Hendon Hooker podcast.
Yes, it is a big.
We did think he was a sleeper quarterback of the whole draft. I mean, if you look at like what he actually did in college, what he accomplished, like he was kind of a better quarterback than Anthony Richardson in a way.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably like one of the steals of the whole draft.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to get into. The quarterbacks in this draft. There's one particular that I talked about the other day that I think is in a terrible spot compared to all the rest of them. So I think Bryce Young is in a decent spot. I think Will Levis has the best spot of them all. I think he won the draft because of the no state income tax part of it as well. But CJ Stroud might be in the worst position of all of them.
Oh,
He's going to have to go in and start right away, and he's on a bad football team. Stetson Bennett's in a better situation.
listen, I overall like the Texans draft, but I think that trade for moving back up for Will Anderson was absolutely idiotic. They gave next year's first up, and I know people say what you want. You can't project next year's class is absolutely absurd. Like if the Texans are a top 3 team, they're basically trading the rights to Marvin Harrison Jr. for Will Anderson.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane to even think about that they did that. I mean, I get it. You want to make your team better now, but I don't see them being better than a bottom 5 team this year. And I even like Stroud, but I agree the situation he's in there is not great. And maybe my bias is speaking for the Bears pick that the Panthers have next year, but I also don't think that Bryce Young's in a great situation either. Their number one receiver now is like Thielen. He's way over the hill, and they draft Mingo. They got rid of Foreman. I mean, they have a good offensive line and defense, but I don't really think he's got a whole lot to throw to there. But I agree that Houston's situation's bad.
Bad.
Okay, I have 2 questions, Lucas. So, one, how did Bears Twitter react when you guys traded that pick? Because I feel like a lot of Bears fans were all in on Jalen Carter. That's my first question. What do you think?
Yeah, it was pretty split, to be honest with you. I know a lot of Bears Twitter was Jalen Carter or bust, but believe it or not, a lot of other Bears Twitter was saying like kind of an intelligent take, in my opinion, that if you add Carter to this locker room, he's the best player, and then who's there to mentor him? Like,
yeah,
he comes in and he dominates, and who's he looking up to? TJ Edwards? Like, that's not going to work out. So, I mean, a lot of Bears Twitter was basically offensive line or bust. So I would say it was 50-50. Carter was my best player on my board, but I kind of understand the risk inherited with that. I mean, you're taking on a lot of risk with a guy with questions. You don't really have the culture in place to kind of cultivate him. And I think, like you said about the Jets, Mike, opposite for the Bears. I mean, they traded that pick within a minute and 30 seconds. Like, it was down to 8:30. The pick was traded, and then the Eagles pick was in. Right, like that was done right away. And I think that Darnell Wright was their guy all along. And honestly, I would say even the Bears fans that wanted Jalen Carter were just happy to see Fields get help, because last year, honestly, it was hard to watch how much he got brutalized. Like, the offensive line was so bad, dude. It was so bad.
Now,
it was.
Sorry, Lucas, but what interests me the most is the running back situation, because I was a huge Khalil Herbert fan. Like, I had him in fantasy.
Too.
I watched him. I can't really give him a comp on who he ran like, but he's just one guy who's his IQ when running, just knowing when to hit a hole is automatic. But now they bring in Deontay Foreman.
And they drafted a running back.
And they drafted Roschon Johnson. Am I correct?
I love, that's one of my favorite picks in the draft. Yeah, he's very good.
So how do you do? Right now it's looking like a running back by committee. I have Deontay being the first running back, Herbert, and then Roschon. Well, how do you think that's going to play out?
Well, last year when they had Herbert and Montgomery, Herbert was actually the lead back over Montgomery, but Herbert's big downfall, and I don't think it's something he can really address. He is horrendous pass blocking. Like, he is a complete liability if you have him back there on third down, and he doesn't run routes. So he's a complete 2-down back. I mean, like you said, Mike, he's really good he led the NFL in yards per carry last year. I mean, a lot of people don't know that. He led all running backs in yards per carry. I think it was like 5.6 yards or something like that per carry. And he had a decent amount of touches too. So he's a monster, and he's a one cut and go type of dude. He doesn't have like straight line speed, but he's very quick with his initial burst. I think Foreman is kind of a nice complement to that because he has more straight line speed, long distance speed. He's a 4.4 guy, and a little bit better. And then Roschon Johnson's kind of, if you took all the great qualities about David Montgomery and made him an elite pass blocker, that's what Johnson is. And I think if he wasn't playing behind Bijan, he would be probably a second round pick, to be honest with you. He reminds me a lot of Latavius Murray, but again, he doesn't have the long speed. His 10-yard split time is actually the same as Gibbs and Bijan, so take that for what you will. He ran a 4.58, but 10-yard split is pretty elite at 1.52. for a running back. I mean, if you're running the same 10-yard split as Gibbs, you're pretty explosive out of the gate. Honestly, I think it's going to be, a pretty even split to start, but I think Johnson will probably take the backfield by storm by the middle of the year. I'm that confident. Like if I had to pick one guy to not bust in this entire draft, would be Johnson. His character, his IQ, like the way he plays is just, you can't match it.
Now, what are your thoughts about how Atlanta went about taking Bijan at 8? Because you saw my trades in Dynasty about that, but Arthur Smith, I think he's actually a decent coach. I know I wanted him for the Jets. It was between him and Salah. I've been happy with that. It seems to me he's looking for that Derrick Henry type again, where run heavy offense, just give it to your cowbell and just pound people with your front line. That's what she said.
Thank you.
But so did you think that was a good move? Because I know a lot of the guys here, like I like Tyler Algier. I mean, he over 1,000 yards. I thought he was a nice little fit to that team. Do you think they went about drafting Bijan the right way?
Well, I guess from my knowledge of the Falcons front office, I kind of expected it. From what I know about the Falcons front office, they quite literally draft the best player on their board, no matter what. And if he's there, they will take him. So Bijan, say what you will about taking a running back in the first round. I know I just killed the Lions for it. But again, the top of their board, it made sense. That's why I had him in my mock draft there. And that's just kind of how they operate, where they're just assembling a team of taking the best talent possible and drafting them no matter what. And Terry Fontenot, who's their GM, has been doing that for a few years now. And I honestly think the Falcons have a decent core. I mean, they need a quarterback, but Bijan there is an interesting fit. I think to your question about Algier, I think he was a good player, but I think he's this year's Michael Carter. I just think there's no way he's not going to see many. Bijan is like, I don't know. He's like as safe a pick as Saquon Barkley was. Like, you just know he's going to be a monster. So I have trouble seeing how they don't give him, majority of the snaps there. So I think for all the Algier fantasy owners, I think he's dead. But the Falcons followed it up too in the second round by taking one of my favorite kind of second tier linemen, Matthew Bergeron. They just signed Lindstrom, their guard. They brought back I think they brought back Caleb McGarry. So their line is actually very solid run blocking. They just don't have a quarterback. I mean,
even
I don't think Ritter's it.
No faith in Ritter.
No,
none.
But that division's horrible. So
no,
they could ride Bijan to 8 or 9 wins and win the division. So
like
I think their offensive line is good.
Me too. No, and I look at their team and it's just listen. Honestly, they made some low key sleeper moves for defense. I mean, they signed Jesse Bates. Is one guy. They signed someone else. I can't remember. But I just feel like defense has always been a problem for them. Like, I thought they would go at least a D tackle. I mean, Jalen Carter was sitting there. So, I mean, listen, if that's the way they draft, so be it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a pattern they've put on the past few years. And I think, I don't know, I started to get the sense as the draft came around that Bijan was kind of a lock. I mean, actually, I think those 3 picks were pretty much locks between the Falcons and Bears and Eagles in the draft. I mean, those were 3 of my top picks, but I think getting closer to the draft, I just had a feeling the Eagles were going to trade up for Carter and the Bears would take right.
Muller?
Dude, I just want the season to start. I want to watch Deuce Vaughn play football so bad.
That's gonna be interesting to see how Dallas delegates their backfield. I mean, is Tony Pollard going to be ready for week 1, do you think?
Going to be tough. Like, I haven't seen much on it. No one's really talking about it yet, but I think as we get closer, it's going to become more and more of a story.
Right. Who else do they have besides Vaughn?
Malik. Last year, I think towards the end of the year, you would have seen him get a few more touches on the ball. He was similar to Zeke, power runner, can get the ball down and run over a few guys. He did that at the goal line, had a touchdown taken away, and then we ran the fake. But no, I like him. I could see him and Deuce splitting a lot early on. Tony's going to take all the reps, has to. Mm-hmm. But I think Deuce will win that position come maybe week 2 or 3. He just the way he looks on tape, there's just no way he's not gonna beat him out.
Yeah, I think I don't know. He might be too small to be like the every down back, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I honestly wouldn't rule out Zeke not being re-signed there either.
Yeah. Oh man, I saw that today. Zeke is my favorite player. Has been. I love him. But Jerry, please. Like, don't you can't do that to us, man. Like Zeke, he can't run anymore. I love the guy. Give him like a coaching role or something. Don't put him on the field. He's like this is literally what Sean Lee was in his last year. Don't put the man back on the field. He doesn't deserve that. Let him walk away happy.
Well, I honestly don't know where he's going to sign. There's still, I mean, today's the first day where comp picks can't be, I guess, deduced for signing players. So there's still quite a few guys on the market who are interesting players that could be signed. So I think that'll play a factor into it.
Lucas, so we have to wrap up. We're already 45 minutes in, which is insane to me. But I just want to chat maybe 5 minutes about the Mets. We have to.
All right. They won the second game. Beatty is in
A
351
dog
now.
bro. He's
Alvarez had the game-winning hit.
Yep, dude. Like we've talked about this so many. I'm telling you, me and Lucas talk about this shit every freaking day. The Mets just cannot figure. Listen, it's super early still, but we can't figure it out, bro. It's like we're going for all these old veterans all the time. I mean, listen, I love DeGrom. You know how much I love him, but
He's on IL already.
he's on IL already. It's the second time the series gotten hurt, which is
sorry about that.
dude. It's just painful watching.
We finally got Scherzer's coming back this series and Verlander, so we'll see. It's a marathon, not a sprint, is what we learned about the Phillies last year. So,
Oh, absolutely. I
gotta hang
totally
in there.
feel where you guys are coming from, except at least your guys are coming back. Rodon might just never come back. We signed this guy for the Yankees, and he gets injured the first 2 days on the team.
He was injured a lot in the White Sox too, man.
Oh my God. It's so frustrating. We got Stanton and this guy, and they can't stay on the field. Stanton doesn't even play in the field. He just sits in the dugout all game.
Stan is one of the most frustrating players in my recent memory, dude. He's so good, but like he cannot stay healthy at all.
Yeah, dude's a fucking piece of glass.
What is I have Judge on my fantasy team this year. What's up with him?
Oh yeah, he's out right now. That's why we're losing every game. Which actually, could you check the score real quick? They're playing now. We're winning.
I told you I was worried about them.
The Yankees. I mean, this is our problem. We don't have guys that can get on base and hit the ball. And Judge is really like everyone looks at him as a power hitter, but
his OBP is insane.
Bottom of the
eighth. He gets on base.
And same with Volpe. He's come around the last couple of weeks. I know.
He's probably leading the league in steals, isn't he? He is like
up there.
His first 3 games it was electric. Every time he got on base, it was just a steal first pitch. It was awesome.
Yeah, that guy's insane, man. That's
if there's one guy I want you guys to watch, I think he's going to be an amazing baseball player. Corbin Carroll.
Okay.
He is
from the Diamondbacks, dude. He's insane.
Lucas, did I send you that video today of him hitting that inside the park home run and running behind the guy?
Oh, but he's blazing. He's probably the fastest dude in the league.
He's
the guy?
He is the fastest player in the league by a mile.
He's like a rookie.
He was rounding third. The guy in front of him was like maybe 5 feet in front of their base.
Like, what base did he start on? Was it like second base? No, not him. Obviously, he started.
Probably second base.
Okay, yeah, that's wild.
Yeah,
I was gonna say first base. Okay, big guy.
And now the Phillies, Trey Turner apparently is kind of underwhelming.
Well, I mean, we all saw that one coming.
Turn it on, dude. I mean, I'm telling you, once they get Harper back, they're going to be a force. But their pitching is always is weak.
Bro, I love, dude, the Taiwan signing just made me laugh because I knew every time the Phillies signed someone from the Mets, he's atrocious. Familia, I don't even think he's in the league anymore. Who knows? Jason Vargas, Taiwan, dude, they gave Taiwan.
Well, you know what's funny about that is the Mets signed David Robertson from the Phillies.
And he's snapping for us.
He's electric, dude. He's awesome. I mean, I had a feeling he's always been a very good player. And
yeah.
But
he's
Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he basically replaced Diaz like nothing. I mean, he's not flashy. He throws a changeup and a knuckle curve, but whatever. I'll take it.
I'm going to give you guys a fair warning. You get this for 1 year. Don't expect any more.
No.
twice on the Yankees. You get literally like 4 good months out of him. Don't expect any more. Those months might come at different times, but don't expect any more than 4 good months out of the guy.
All right, we're ready. We're ready for it, man.
Yeah, I'm just ready for our guys to come back. But the Mets hung in there. They're basically 500 at the end of April. Whatever.
Yeah. It's just tough to watch because if Lindor and Pete don't hit, it's like everyone shuts down. Granted, Nimmo is like all-star caliber right now, which my pops always said, and I freaking love the guy. But it's just one day, like if we're not hitting, we're losing the game. And if Pete and Lindor don't hit, we're losing the game. But I don't know. It's early. I'm not going to worry yet, but there's reason, and you understand.
I understand.
Yeah.
But before I go, I need to ask your predictions for your football teams, though. Like, I got to know, what are the Jets doing this year? Are they placing first?
If we don't make the playoffs, this is a failure. But
You'll make the playoffs,
I truly believe that we're actually going to win the division. I think the Bills are taking a step back, 100%. I don't think everyone thinks they're as good as they are. Like,
by the way, Dalton Kincaid, draft him in fantasy.
That absolutely hurts. But dude, I mean, who else, dude? I mean, James Cook, Damian Harris, like those are good guys.
They signed Latavius Murray today, and people hate me for it, but I said he's better than Cook. He's their best back on the roster.
I don't think James Cook is all that, in my opinion.
He's not that good. Latavius Murray, they're still kind of good. I've always liked him. He's a pro's pro.
I just don't see, like, listen, you can't count them out, obviously, but I feel like they've been in the same cycle and they just can't figure it out. They're a regular season team, but I mean, I don't see any reason why the Jets won't win. They literally have a top 5 defense. They now have Rodgers. We are going to have healthy Breece Hall. We have Lazard. I just don't see it. Like, Miami could be close. I think Miami is definitely a playoff team, but we have to win. I think we win the division 100%.
It's going to be a battle of the 2 almost retired quarterbacks.
Yeah, and literally on this pod, I was calling out Rodgers saying he's going to host Jeopardy, and here we are.
Telling you, Rodgers is not as good as you think he is.
Dude, listen, I wanted Lamar for the longest time, bro. You know this.
Yeah, I know. I was telling Mike for a while that you don't want Rodgers. Like, I was praying that he was staying in the North. I was actually like begging. I was like, please stay in the North. That's how bad he was last year. He was horrible.
It was rough to watch for sure. I mean, the Packers I just think they're a disaster. Like, I feel like they're just getting old and there was no weapons for Rodgers. They never helped him out.
Do you think Love is going to stink it up this year?
Well, going by history of Favre snapping and then Rodgers snapping and then Love.
Well, not going by history. Do you think Love will stink it up this year?
Yeah, I think
they can't have 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in a row, right?
I think he'll be below average to average. I don't see him being exceptionally freaking good. I don't see it happening, but I think he'll be okay. He sat behind him. He learned. So that's a wait and see. I have no idea because he's barely played.
Yeah. I'm strictly judging his performances off of where they put his family. If he's in the upper deck like they were in his only game against Kansas City, he's clearly having a stinker.
And what about you? What are the Cowboys doing? Are they going to compete for the East this year? I hope so. I hate the East.
We all have to remember that, like, there's been no repeat winners of the NFC East.
Oh, dude, the Super Bowl winner also always lays up a stinker too. Where the people that make the Super Bowl never, like, they always come out flat.
I don't know if you've listened to, but Eagles aren't going back to the Super Bowl for a long time because Jalen Hurts lost his first one, so they're completely done. They won't be back in the Super Bowl ever while he's the quarterback.
That's a curse, right? Like the Burrow curse.
Yep. I think Cowboys win the NFC East, and we will lose in a heartbreaking fashion where Dak forgets how to play football in the NFC Championship. Doesn't matter what team we play. That's my prediction.
All right, I like it. As long as it's not the Eagles, I don't care.
No failures in sports.
And the Bears?
The Bears will fight for the 7th seed. Maybe they might make it. Maybe they might not. I think they'll place 2nd in the North this year. I'm giving them 8 or 9 wins. I think the Lions will win the division, barely. And I think the Packers will be pretty bad.
Yeah. So Bears sneak in on the final day.
Yeah. That's stupid. Honestly, the Bears remind me a lot of the Eagles from 2 years ago. I really do think Fields is going to kind of be like Fields. I think last year was very much like Hurts was 2 years ago, where people were really questioning what he has. And then they put some more weapons around them. And they're like, okay, this guy's pretty good. I'm a huge believer in Fields. I think he's going to be really good. So I'm going to double down on my faith in him, but I'm saying the Bears are going to win 8 or 9 games this year and be a threat for the 7th seed. Won't do anything else though.
Well, Lucas, we're probably like the hour mark, but dude,
Yeah.
we appreciate you coming on. I want to come on your podcast for sure.
Yeah, feel free. For sure.
Again, Lucas's podcast, Believe in Monsters, Chicago Bears podcast on Believe Network.
BLEAV.
There we go. I had to look at it again. I'm like, hold on. But Lucas, you're the man. It's great to talk to you again. And we got to go to a Mets game this summer. Again, we have to.
I'm down. Yeah, I'm down. Let me know when you're free and I'll be there.
Yes, sir. But bro, thanks again. Hit me up tomorrow. We'll chat.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you guys.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Lucas. Nice seeing you, bro.
Go Sixers.
Oh, yeah.